Hello guys, welcome to RP Academy. So we are going to start a new chapter today, that is chapter 3, in which we are going to study about the prospectus as well as the allotment part. Okay, so of course this is going to be the core part of your syllabus, so of course it is very important. So we have to understand that while we are building a company, we have to first need money to expand that business, right? So here we say that there are only a few legal ways by which a company can raise capital. So in this particular chapter we are going to answer three fundamental questions: that who can issue these securities, how can they issue these securities, also we are going to study about who regulates the issue. Okay, so we are going to study about these particular three things in this chapter. So let's begin. First of all, you have to understand that what is a security. Do you know what is a security for you? See, security is here a basic instrument, or better say a tool, through which a financial instrument, while I am saying an instrument, I mean a financial instrument, okay, which represents ownership or debt. For an example, while we talk about equity shares, preference shares, we talk about the bonds, debentures, we also talk about here corporate debentures, right? Then you will think that these securities are just a piece of paper, right? And now you also get these in the electronic format through which companies are raising funds. So why do companies issue such securities? Can someone tell me that why are these companies issuing the securities? See, suppose 10,000 crore rupees of fund is required to whom? To, let us consider an organization named as Tata. Okay, you know very well about the Tata. So they want to build a semiconductor plant, thus as they are already building a semiconductor plant. You know very well about it. I hope you know. If you do not know, then let me tell you that semiconductor plant is being started by Tata company. Okay, then they are focusing on $11 billion fabrication plant in Dholera, Gujarat, and a semiconductor assembly and test facility in Jagi Road, Assam. So here, should it borrow now the funds from bank, borrow from RBI, or print money itself? No, it can only do one thing, it can issue the securities. Okay, so here you will see that now, because Tata wants to start a semiconductor facility, it will ask the investors to purchase these securities and company will be able to receive the funds. Understood? So now we have issuance pathways, the ways through which we can issue the funds, raise the capital and issue these securities. First of all, let's talk about public offer. Now, you understand that there are two types of companies, public company and private company. I had taught you that in the last lecture, where I had told you that public companies are the companies in which public has some shareholding. Now, because there is a public involved, there are more options for these companies to raise funds. So we have four routes through which we can actually raise the funds. First of all, we can go with the public offer, that is IPO and FPO. Then we can go with here private placement. We can go with right issue as well as bonus issue. Okay, so here you will see that in the public offer, the company invites the general public, okay, you and me, the retail investors, to come and invest in the shares of this particular company. So here, if Tata wants to raise, let us say 5,000 crore rupees, it will establish a prospectus. Lakhs of investors will apply and this will be known as your public offer. So there are different types of public offer: initial public offer and further public offer that comply with the chapter 3. So what is an IPO? Initial public offer. The company is issuing shares to the public for the first time. Okay, so a startup that is listing its shares, let us say, on which stock exchange, let us consider National Stock Exchange or Bombay Stock Exchange or both. Now what will happen here? The first issue will come and the company will get listed. Okay, it is issuing the shares for the very first time, so it will be known as Zomato IPO, LIC IPO, and here it will also be known as Paytm IPO. Okay, so whichever company brings the IPO, we call it as an initial public offer. Okay, understood? Now consider that I have already raised 5,000 crore rupees through the IPO. Okay, through the IPO, where I had already issued 10% of shares of my company. Now I want additional 5% shares to be issued. So now already my company is listed, I do not need to list it again, so we call it as follow on public offer. Okay, so first time let us consider I have already issued 1000 shares. Now I want to issue 500 more shares, so there are 1500 outstanding shares now in the stock exchange. Okay, so this is known as your further public offer. The company is already listed, it is raising money from the public. So if let us say SBI is already listed, you know very well, now it wants to issue more shares to raise additional capital, then it will be known as FPO. Okay, so first issue is known as IPO, subsequent issue is known as FPO. Okay, where the company is already listed. Now private placement. What is private placement? I want only specific investors to invest my company, not the complete public. Okay, so here it is governed by the section 42, where instead of inviting the public, the company approaches selected persons. Okay, so let's say company needs 100 crore rupees, so instead of inviting 10 lakh investors, it will invite LIC, SBI Mutual Fund, HDFC Mutual Fund, ICICI Prudential. So only selected investors are going to receive the offer, and this will be known as your private placement. Okay, now rights or bonus issue. What is happening in the rights or bonus issue? See, here you will see that right issue simply means that we have few existing shareholders who have purchased the shares of my company, right? Now I am asking them that okay, I need to issue 5% more shares. Okay, I need to issue 5% more shares. So here what will happen? Their voting right will be diluted, right? So I ask them, do you want to purchase the shares, or I should offer them to someone else? So here in the right issue, you will see that if a company has, let us say, 100 shareholders, company needs more money. So instead of asking outsiders for the funds, it will first ask existing shareholders that would you like to buy more shares, and this is known as your right issue. So here what is happening, let us say that you own 100 shares. Now company is issuing 1:5 of right issue. That is, if you have, let us say, 100 shares, then you can purchase 20 additional shares. So what will happen? You will be not having a problem of or an issue of related to the voting power dilution. So here, as per this, listed companies may also comply with SEBI regulation. Okay, so here you will see that why we are bringing right issues, because existing owners deserve the first chance. It protects their ownership. Now talking about bonus issue. In the bonus issue, as an investor, I do not have to pay anything. Here I had to pay some extra money in the right issue, but in a bonus issue what will happen? Let us say company has earned a lot of profit this year. Now company wants its shareholders to enjoy the same. So company says that to all the shareholders, just an example, who have 100 shares in my company, I will be providing them 4 extra shares. Okay, or better say, if someone has 25 shares of my company, I will provide 1 extra bonus share for free. So here you will see that if I have 100 shares, I will simply receive 4 more shares. Fine. So here what is happening? We are not paying any money as an investor, rather company has huge reserves. So instead of paying cash, it is capitalizing its own reserves. So in a right issue, investor is paying money, company receives the fund, and it is optional. But in the bonus issue, the things are different. There are free shares, company receives no funds, and there is an automatic allocation. So who can use these methods? Tell me. सो यहाँ पर वी विल सी दैट प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट जो है इसमें हमें कंप्लाई करना है सेक्शन 42 के साथ में. राइट बोनस इशू होता है तो प्रोविजंस को फॉलो करना है, और एक प्राइवेट कंपनी पब्लिक ऑफर नहीं करती है, आईपीओ या एफपीओ नहीं ला सकती है. ठीक है. सो ओके, सॉरी इन हिंदी आई टॉट यू. सो प्राइवेट कंपनी कैन नॉट इशू पब्लिक ऑफर, कैन यूज ओनली प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट, राइट इशू एंड बोनस इशू. सो यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट अ पब्लिक कंपनी हैज 4 ऑप्शंस: पब्लिक ऑफर, प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट, right issue and bonus issue, while a private company can only go with private placement, right issue and bonus issue, no public offer. Okay, so you can be asked a question on the same as well. Okay, now let's talk about the section 24, where we are going to talk about the powers of SEBI, and also we will talk about the different kinds of prospectus. So you know very well that SEBI was established in 1988, right? And now you know very well that also that SEBI's main objective is to protect the investors, develop securities market and regulate securities market. Now when does SEBI have power? See, either the company must be listed or it has some intention to get listed, that is it is intending to get listed, meaning if company wants shares to be traded on National Stock Exchange or Bombay Stock Exchange, okay, or it is already listed or it is having an intention to list the shares, then SEBI will be regulating. So SEBI controls the issue of securities like IPO, FPO, right issue, preferential issue and qualified institutional placement. So here if you are selling Infosys shares, then SEBI regulation will govern that complete process, and in case that the company is not paying any dividend to its shareholders, then also SEBI will come into power. Suppose company has declared some dividend but it is never paying, then what will happen? SEBI can intervene in this situation. So who is regulating the unlisted companies now? See, the power belongs to central government. Then you know about the registrar of companies, then you know about the NCLT and regional director. So all these people, all these powers have, all these authorities have the power to regulate the unlisted companies, okay, understood? So SEBI administers issuance, transfer, dividend for listed, intending to list companies. Central government, NCLT and ROC administer unlisted entities and specific matters, okay. So now matters in prospectus. So I hope you have understood that, okay fine, if I have to transfer the shares or there is some dividend issues, we will go to SEBI. Now prospectus of unlisted companies is regulated by central government and return of allotment is done by ROC. Now talking about the redemption of preference shares, it will be ROC and NCLT. Now you will see section 25. So section 25 simply talks about the documents that contain offer of securities for sale deemed prospectus, okay. So here we will see that there is a section 25 deemed prospectus, okay. Here we have section 26 as well as the shelf prospectus. I will discuss it later in the same class, but I will discuss it later, okay. Now section 25 talks about the documents that contain offer of securities, right. So first you have to understand what is a prospectus. Now a prospectus is an invitation. You get a marriage card for a marriage, right. You have to if you have to attend any marriage, you get an invitation card. In the very same way, prospectus works like an invitation card, where they invite the general public or the investors to purchase the securities. But then what is a deemed prospectus? See, here you will understand that suppose company does not directly sell the shares, okay, instead it first allows shares to another company. Now that company will sell them to the public. So should the law allow this shortcut? No. Hence the law says that document is already treated as a prospectus and it will be known as deemed prospectus. For an example, let us say that ABC Limited has allotted its shares to XYZ Limited. Now what will happen? XYZ Limited will, or XYZ Merchant Bank, okay. Now XYZ Merchant Bank will sell the shares to the public. Now what will happen? Now you will see that here the public thinks that, okay, XYZ Merchant Bank is selling the shares, but actually ABC is raising the funds, and that's why offer document will be treated as an ABC's prospectus. So, and why was this introduced? See, otherwise companies could escape legal liability, okay. They could simply use intermediaries and the company prevents this loophole. See, if it was not the case, then companies could escape the legal liability, so they could simply use the intermediaries and the Companies Act prevent this kind of loophole. So what is the legal principle behind this? They say that substance is more important than the form. If money is ultimately raised from the public, the law treats it as a prospectus. So when it is presumed, see, the act assumes the company intended public sale if either of these condition is satisfied, okay. So what are the conditions that we have to understand? First of all, let's talk about the principle. Any document containing an offer for sale to the public is deemed a prospectus if the company allots securities with the intent to public offer. So assumed if the public offer is within 6 months from after allotment or whole consideration was not received by the company at offer date. See, we talk about the condition 1 that public offer was made within 6 months after allotment, meaning consider that ABC Limited allotted a share to XYZ Merchant Bank, okay, but after 2 months Merchant Bank had sold them. Now the law presumes that original intention was the public offer, okay, understood. Now second condition is that company has not yet received the full consideration. For example, ABC had allotted its shares to XYZ Merchant Bank, but here XYZ Merchant Bank did not have made the full payment for the shares. Now what will happen? Before the full payment takes place, shares were already sold to the public. So again the law presumes that it was meant for the public issue. So simply remember one thing, 6 months or money is pending. So if either exist or deemed prospectus, okay. Now mandatory disclosures, they say that first of all you have to understand that there must be some documents that they have to disclose. We have to maintain the transparency. So what is the net amount received, how much amount company has received or is going to receive, so that there are no hidden profits, okay. So here you will see that at the time or place to inspect the allotment or contract, you have to inform the details. Also talking about the inspection, now you will see that the offer document must specify where and when the allotment contract, where and when the allotment contract can be inspected. So we need here transparency. Talking about the execution part, it was signed by 2 directors if company or half of the partners, okay. So here you will see that suppose offerer is a company and it needs signatures of 2 directors, then suppose offerer is a partnership firm and it needs signatures of at least half of the partners. So what will happen? They will make responsible persons legally accountable. So here false statements can simply attract either the civil liability or criminal liability or both, right? So here you will see that under the section 25 we said that companies allotting shares to the investment bank or merchant banker, and then that merchant banker is offering to the public, and here you will see an offer document and law will treat it as a deemed prospectus. Understood? Hopefully this part is clear to you. So here all the theory has been written in a mind map format. You can also study from here. So you just remember the execution of the document prior to, remember the example, effects and consequences, okay. So here can I simply say that consider Infosys is launching its IPO, then public will subscribe the shares and the section will be applicable 23, right? If private limited issues shares to 20 investors, then it is applicable, private placement will be there, and section 42 will be read with the section 23. Now if TCS gives 1 bonus share for every 1 share held with the public, then it will be applicable on bonus issue, okay. Understood? I hope this is clear to you. Now let's move towards the next section, that is section 26. So here I will be teaching you the section 26, that is the matters in prospectus. So here you will see that we understood that how companies can issue securities, who is regulating them, and what is a deemed prospectus. Now these sections I have answered few questions, but now we also need to know that what are the matters that must be stated in a prospectus and why is a prospectus important. Suppose you are investing 5 lakh rupees in an IPO. Now would you invest if the company simply said that trust us? Of course not. You want to know by what is the business of the company, right? Why it is raising these funds, what are the risks involved, what are its financial statement like balance sheet, cash flow statement, who are its directors and how much debt does it have. So a prospectus provides all these answers. So it is also known as the biography of public issue. So here you are going to see that it must be dated, signed by directors, filed with ROC before publication, valid for only 90 days post filing, and contravention incurs fine up to 30 lakh rupees. So here can I simply say that a prospectus is a legal document issued by a public company, right, What it is doing, as I told you, it is just working like an invitation card for the public to subscribe to the securities like shares or debt instruments. It also contains all the material. While I use the term material in finance, just remember I simply mean the significant or the most important, okay, significant information required for an informed investment decision. So why does the law require it? See, without disclosures, investors could be cheated, companies could hide the losses, fraudulent promoters could disappear after collecting money. So hence section 26 mandates full and fair disclosure. Understood? So what are the essential requirements? We must understand that every prospectus must mention its date, so it must be dated. Okay, so here, because the financial information is changing over the time, a prospectus dated today cannot be treated as current forever, right? After 10 years you cannot use it, after 5 years, after 2 years, even after 1 year. Now it must be signed by every director, every proposed director, or their authorized attorney, so that we maintain the accountability in this case. Okay, so here anyone cannot sign this, okay, because anyone signing becomes legally responsible for false statement also. Fine. Now financial information. So you have to understand one simple thing, that the prospectus must contain financial disclosures prescribed by SEBI. Also, all the financial disclosures that we have to make are prescribed by SEBI, but also in the consultation with the central government. So audited financial statements like balance sheet, profit and loss account, cash flow statements, risk factors, industry analysis, market variation, also auditors reports are important. So investors should know both the opportunities and risk. Now let's talk about filing with the ROC, this part. Okay, so here you will see that a prospectus cannot be issued unless a signed copy is filed with ROC, that is Registrar of Companies, and filing is completed on or before publication. So we have to prepare prospectus, sign it by the directors, file it with ROC, publish the prospectus and invite the public. Okay, so now face of the prospectus, they talk about the face of the prospectus. See, here we talk about one simple thing, that the first page, okay, the cover of the book is what? It's cover, right? Similarly, face of the prospectus must be its face or the first page. So a company has been filed with the ROC and required documents have been attached, or two statements should be directly stated. This assures that investor has already completed all the statutory filings, or sorry, the company has already completed the statutory filings. Okay, now validity of the prospectus. So you have seen here that it is only for 90 days, right? So here you will understand that a prospectus becomes invalid after 90 days from the date it is delivered to the ROC. For example, filed with ROC 1st January, last valid date will be 31st March, that is 90 days have been completed. So if published after 90 days, a fresh filing is required. Okay, so you have to learn this particular passage, and contravention will incur up to 30 lakh rupees of fine. So here they say that section 26 does not apply in two situations. What are those two situations? First of all, they talk about the right issue. Just give me a second. Let me erase this particular part. Yeah. So here you will see that what they are talking about. They are talking about right issue. If securities are offered only to the existing shareholders or existing debenture holders, so the detailed prospectus requirement do not apply. Fine. Now, shelf prospectus, valid for maximum 1 year. It requires filing an information memorandum, that is form passed to at least 1 month before subsequent offers during validity. So here you will see that you understand the uniform securities that have already been listed. Here we talk about the new securities must be identical or same to the existing listed securities. Okay, so here you also have to understand that we are talking about what? We are talking about the shelf prospectus that is valid for maximum 1 year, and we provide the information memorandum at least 1 month before the subsequent offers during its validity. See, Shelf prospectus is defined under the section 31, and here it is one of the smartest concepts in securities laws. Consider, there is a bank that is planning to raise funds 5 times during a year. Okay, it wants to raise the funds 5 times. Now what is happening? Should it prepare a brand new prospectus every time? Of course not. That would be very expensive and repetitive. So we are using a shelf prospectus. It is filed once, can be used for multiple issues during its validity period, and a shelf prospectus is valid for 1 year from the date of the first offer. And talking about the information memorandum that is provided here, see here we say that before each subsequent offer, okay, we have brought first offer. Now SBI mutual funds or SBI funds were there na, in IPO. Now consider they have raised funds one time. Now they want to raise funds again. Now what will happen? Before the second offer, during the validity period, the company will file, or the company must file, an information memorandum in form pass 2. So this, the time limit will be provided at least 1 month before the subsequent offer. Okay, why? Because important information may have changed or the original prospectus. For example, there may be any new litigation, right, charged against the company. There may be the changes in the financial position. There may be some new borrowing, some new risk involved, or changes in the management. So information memorandum updates investors. Consider HDFC had brought one offer, right? Now it is bringing another offer. So here within 6 months you have seen that there are significant changes in HDFC management, as well as in the type of borrowings, and so many changes are there in its financial position. So of course for a shelf prospectus, information memorandum becomes very important. Understood? Now let's talk about the withdrawal option. Suppose investors have already applied for the shares, right, and they have also paid the application money, but there are some material changes, that is there are some significant changes that is occurring before allotment. The company must inform the applicants of the changes and allow them to withdraw their money if they want to. Okay, also refund the money within 15 days. So if ABC bank is planning to issue bonds every 3 months, so now instead of preparing 4 prospectus, it filed 1 shelf prospectus before each issue. It has to file an information memorandum with updated information. So it is going to reduce the cost while maintaining the transparency. Understood? Hopefully this is clear. Now let us move to some other sections. So here we have liability framework that we are also going to study, but of course we will study before that regarding the section 27, section 29, 32, 33. Also section 31 is about shelf prospectus that we have already covered. Okay, so we will see some important sections now. First of all, let's talk about section 27 that talks about variation in the term of contract or objects in the prospectus. So suppose a company raises money saying that we are going to build some solar power plants. Now it also says that we have built a solar power plant, and after receiving 1000 crore it decides that let us buy hotels instead. Can it do that? No. A company cannot change the object stated in the perspective. While I am saying object, I simply means objective. Okay, so here object stated in the prospectus or the terms of contract referred to it in the prospectus, unless it is approved by the shareholders through a special resolution. So here you will see that investors have invested for a specific purpose. If you change the purpose without approval, that would be unfair to them, and a special resolution must be passed in a general meeting. So a special resolution generally requires at least 75% of the votes that need to be casted in favor. Understood? Now let's talk about if some shareholders are not happy with the option, right? This is special resolution part, and they want an exit option. Are they provided the same? Yes, they are provided an exit option as well. So here we say that okay, if you want to sell your shares at a price determined under SEBI regulation, you can do the same. Okay, understood? Also the notice for special resolution must be advertised in the form pass 1. Clear? Now let's move to another section, that is section 29 that talks about dematerialization. So tell me what is dematerialization. See, now we are bringing the public offer of securities in the demat format, or better say electronic format. So earlier the share certificates were the physical paper. Now what was the problem? You would have seen many a times that people have found the shares that their parents had purchased, or the grandparents, where they have become now millionaires or billionaires. So the problem was either these papers were getting lost, or there was some theft, forgery, fake certificates, or delay in the transfers. So we brought electronic securities. This is known as your dematerialization. So we are converting the physical certificates into the electronic entry, and through that we are converting them in or sending them into the demat account. So every company making a public offer must issue securities now only in the demat form, and unlisted public companies will be filing Form Pass 6 as well. So here they have to comply with the Depositories Act 1997 6 and applicable SEBI regulations. So they say that all the certain prescribed unlisted companies can hold securities only in demat form and transfer them in only demat form. So the demat requirement does not apply to certain unlisted companies. Which one? Nidhi, government, and wholly owned subsidiaries. Okay. So here you will see that in the Form Pass 6, every applicable unlisted public company must file this Form Pass 6 with the Home Registrar of Companies within 60 days from the end of each half year. And here to reconcile the issued capital, that how much capital was issued, how much you have been paid, which are the listed capital, and how much dematerialized securities are there. It will help us to always reconcile the same and help detect the discrepancies in the documents. So now let's talk about the investor grievances. Now there might be some problems with the investors. They may say that okay, there is some kind of scam or fraud happened with me. So complaints related to demat securities are addressed through depositories, issuer company, the company that is issuing the securities. Then SEBI has a scores platform, okay, SEBI compliant redress system, other competent authorities. Understood? So we have to understand that there are certain platforms provided for investors for their grievance redressal as well. Now let us talk about section 32, where we will talk about the red herring prospectus. Guys, red herring prospectus is very important. You have to understand it in detail. Okay, so suppose that there is a company, okay, that has decided to raise the funds. Now what will it do? It will first of all introduce a red herring prospectus. So consider there is a company, what is happening, it has decided to launch an IPO. Now before the issue opens, the company knows what is the business model. It also knows what are the risks involved in this particular business. Also it talks about the management of the company and financials, right? So here you will see that it does not know the final issue price, number of shares finally sold, and total amount to be raised. So should it wait? No. It issues a red herring prospectus. So you know, in a red herring prospectus we never talk about the number of shares that we are going to list, the price for each share, or the amount of funds that we want to raise. Okay, so a red herring prospectus is an incomplete prospectus. It is issued before the public issue opens, where certain information, mainly the final price and issue size, is intentionally left blank. Now you may think why the name is red herring. See, it was written with red ink earlier, okay, to attract the attention. So here you will see that the document does not contain complete particulars. This statement was printed in the red ink, hence the name was given red herring prospectus. So company will plan IPO, it will prepare a draft prospectus, then prepare a red herring prospectus, then start its book building, then it will decide that what will be the final price for this particular share, and then they will release the final prospectus. So the RHP must be filed with whom? The Registrar of Companies, and it must be filed at least 3 days before. 3 days before what? The opening of subscription list. So once your issue is closing, once that bidding is closing, the company knows final issue price, total shares issued, total capital raised, and it must file with the final prospectus with Registrar of Companies and SEBI. Now suppose that there is an IPO band. Just wait, let me write it nicely. Okay, now there is an IPO band of 500 to 550 rupees. That is IPO price band. Okay. So can I simply say here that investors are bidding within this range, and after bidding the final price becomes 542 rupees. So the final prospectus now includes how much amount? 542 rupees as the final issue price. Also they talk about the shares allotted and total money raised. Fine. So in section 32 we talk about the 3 days file of RHP. Okay, understood? So here you will see incomplete prospectus filed 3 days before the offer opens, then final prospectus will be filed post closing. Now section 33. What does section 33 talks about? Issue of application forms. Imagine you are having only an application form that says that pay 2 lakh rupees. Will you invest? Of course not. You need information first. So here every application form must normally be accompanied by a abridged prospectus. What is an abridged prospectus? It is just like a short summary. Short summary of what? See, it is a short summary of the full prospectus that contains the key disclosures that investors need before applying. And why we are not providing the full prospectus? Because it can exceed 300 pages. So the abridged version provides the essential information in a concise format. So here, while you are having an application form, it must accompany with the abridged prospectus, and it does not see, it is not required if it is an underwriting agreement. Okay, or if it is a public issue. So here, because underwriters are professional market participants, they can already see the 300-page full prospectus, and if securities are not offered to the public, for example right issue, only existing shareholders will receive the offer. Now right to full prospectus. If any person asks for the complete prospectus before the subscription closes, then company has to provide. If company says no, I am not going to provide you the full prospectus, they have to pay a fine of 50,000 rupees. Understood? So all these things we have provided you in the content itself. If you want to just study through the video classes, you can write down the things. Okay, now section 34 and 35 is also there, which talks about the liability. As I told you that we will be discussing the same in the later part, so let's discuss it now. Now let's talk about the section 34 first. So it talks about the strongest investor protection provisions in the Companies Act. Now let us take an example. So the company says that my actual profit is 500 crores, okay, but in reality their profit, the real profit or the actual profit is just 50 crores or 80 crores. Now what will happen? Here thousands of investors will purchase the shares thinking that the company has a profit of 500 crore, and later the truth will emerge. Then who is responsible? The Companies Act provides two types of liability here. Section 34 talks about the criminal liability, in which they say that if a prospectus contains a misstatement, that is a false information, okay, false statement, misleading statement, material omission, meaning they have already omitted the significant information, okay, then in that scenario what will happen? Under the section 447, it will be considered as a fraud, and every person authorizing its issue who already had signed the particular issue will be criminally liable. Okay, so here you will see that what will be the punishment under section 447? See, fraud attracts severe punishment, including imprisonment depending upon the nature and amount of fraud, fine, or both. So section 447 is one of the strictest anti-fraud provisions in the Companies Act. Now consider that there is a person who says that I am not liable for this particular person, and they prove that the statement or omission was immaterial. So in that condition they will be here no discharged of such kind of criminal liabilities. Now Let's talk about civil liabilities, that is section 35. So investors are losing money because of false statements. Now who is compensating them? Persons such as directors, promoters, experts and others authorizing the prospectus, and they must pay the compensation. Okay, so in criminal liability we were providing them the jail, okay, imprisonment, government was prosecuting people, and but in the civil liability they have to compensate the investors, and investors may claim damage. So directors, promoters, experts must compensate for losses from misleading statements. So, and withdrawal of consent before issue is an exemption in this situation. So no liability if the person withdraws consent before issue or prospect was issued before their knowledge or consent. So suppose there is an auditor who has resigned, the company still publishes the prospectus showing his consent, then he is not liable because consent had already been withdrawn by him. Understood? Now section 38, personation. So we know that, okay, there are few times where the company, okay, here for the acquisition of securities there are few fake applications. So someone applying in a fictitious name, okay, in a fictitious name, or there is someone who is using multiple names, using fake identities, getting shares allotted fraudulently. In that case, what will happen? In that case, there will be a punishment under the section 447. Fine, understood? So here you will see that applying in a fictitious name or making multiple application attracts section 447. Gains are disgorged and credited to the Investor Education and Protection Fund. Understood? So court may also order the disgorgement of illegal gains, the seizure of the securities, disposal of the securities, and money realized goes to the Investor Education and Protection Fund. Clear? Now section 39, allotment rules. What does it mean? See, here this section answers that when can the shares actually be allotted. So what is the rule 1? Minimum subscription must be received. So what is the minimum subscription? The minimum amount that must be subscribed before the company can proceed with allotment. So here the SEBI requirement is 90%, meaning if you have decided to issue 1000 crores worth of securities and your shares are only subscribed till the limit 900 crore, then the IPO is fine. But if the subscribed amount, this is the issued capital, the subscribed amount is 850 crore, then here the subscription or the IPO will be cancelled. So here if the issue size is 1000 crores, minimum subscription required will be 900 crore. If only 850 crore is received, the shares cannot be allotted. Rule 2 is that application money must also be received. So the amount payable on application cannot be less than 5% of the nominal value. Meaning if the minimum subscription is not received, that is suppose 90% subscription is not achieved, the company must refund all the application money. So within 15 days after the specified period, here you will see that they have to return the money. Okay, so if minimum not met in 30 days, the refund within 15 days must take place, and later late refunds may also, if you have not refunded the amount within 15 days, what will happen? Then the company will have to pay 15% per annum interest to the investors. Okay, till these 15 days there is no penalty, but after this 15 day, that is on the from the 16th day, 15% per annum of interest will be charged. So ROC filing, return of allotment within 30 days, delay penalty will also attract 1000 rupees per day or 1 lakh rupees maximum. So if the company delays the repayment, director becomes jointly and severely liable, and they have to pay an interest to 15% per annum. In a joint and severe liability, you will see that investors can recover the entire amount from any one of the liable actors. Okay, so here they can ask any one of the liable directors to pay back their money, and in this situation who may then recover contribution from the others. So ROC must be done, return of allotment for ROC filing must be done within 30 days. The penalty will be 1000 rupees per day, that can go maximum 1 lakh rupees. Understood? Now stock exchanges, that is section 40. This talks about securities to be dealt with stock exchanges. So here you have to understand that this section talks that how investors are receiving listed and tradable securities. So before making a public offer, the company must apply to either National Stock Exchange or Bombay Stock Exchange in India, right? So here it is mandatory before making a public offer. Now they also say that investors should be able to sell their shares after allotment. That's why we are talking about these exchanges, and application money cannot be mixed with the company's normal fund, so it must remain in a separate account, and the account must be opened with which bank? A scheduled bank. Okay. Here they also say that the money can be used only for the adjustment against allotment after listing permission or refund to the applicant if the allotment or listing does not proceed. Consider you had applied for the IPO, you did not get the allotted shares, then what will happen? Here you will receive back your amount. Okay, understood? So here you will see that there are few commissions that they are providing. So what do they say? They say that if the securities are the main here the securities are shares, then maximum 5% of issue size or rate authorized by the article of association, whichever is lower, will be the underwriting commission. And if the security is a debenture, then maximum 2.5% of the issue size or the rate authorized by the articles, whichever is lower, that will be considered the underwriting commission. Fine. Now let's talk about the section 42, that is private placement. Okay, before that talking about the section 41, we talk about the global depository receipts and American depository receipts. So I think I have already taught you what are the global depository receipts. Consider that Indian company wants to issue its shares on a global exchange, for example London Stock Exchange. Now what will it do? It will go and connect with any of the merchant bank in London. Okay, so here after, let us say that they have considered HSBC. Now HSBC will purchase the shares from them, and it will simply create depository receipts where one depository receipt can have n number of shares. So let us say one depository receipt have 5 shares, and ABC company wanted its 10,000 shares to be listed. So here what will happen? We will see that 2,000 depository receipts were listed on London Stock Exchange. Now on the London Stock Exchange, people may purchase the shares in pounds, so they will invest pounds just like any other company that has listed its shares on the London Stock Exchange. In the very similar way, these depository receipts will be these depository receipts will be listed, and then investors can pay the amount to the company will receive the funds in foreign currency, and here there will be a custodian that keeps the shares with itself. If we talk about American depository receipt, here all the shares or the depository receipts must be listed on only American Stock Exchange like Nasdaq or New York Stock Exchange. Understood? Now let's move towards section 42, that is private placement. So this is one of the most frequently tested sections. Private placement simply means offering securities to a selected group of identified persons instead of inviting the general public. So here you will see that per offer we can only have maximum 50%, and overall in a financial year you can have 200 persons only to whom you are here giving the offer. See, these particular 50% or 200% are not counted in the qualified institutional buyer limit or ESOPs. Okay, the employees receiving these shares under ESOPs. Why? Because institutional investors and employee stock plans are governed by separate regulatory framework. So what is the allotment time? See, application money must be received and allotment must be done within 60 days. So today if you have received the application money, within 60 days you have to allot the shares, and if the private placement is failed, you have to return back the amount or repay the amount within 15 days after the expiry of the 60-day period. And if there is any kind of delay, that is from the 16th day, what will happen? After the 60th day, what will happen? You have to pay a 12% per annum interest to the investor whom the securities were not allotted, and the offer can be made only to the identified persons whose name are recorded in advance. No public invitation is permitted. So here you will see that complete records must be filed with the ROC within 30 days of circulating the private placement offer letter. Okay, now consider that if the section 42 is violated, then what will happen? See, in that condition there will be a penalty that will be lower of the amount raised through the private placement or 2 crore rupees. Additionally, you have to refund all money. Refund must be done within 30 days of the penalty order, and you have to pay 12% interest per annum. Understood? Hopefully this is clear to you. So penalty equal to the lower of amount raised or 2 crore rupees, must also refund monies with 12% interest within 30 days of the order. So we have already discussed here section 42. We have talked about here section 38, 39, 37, that is actions by the affected person, 36, 35, 34, 33, 32 and too many other sections like 25, 26, 27. So hopefully everything is clear to you. Also guys, if there are any kind of doubt that you are having, you can definitely connect with me on our Telegram channels, that are IRP Academy, JIB, CIB. Also we have a special group that is for PFRDA students, so you can also message me there. Fine. If there is anything that like a feedback you want to tell, definitely you can comment in the comment section. If you like the lecture, that also you can tell me in the comment section. You can like the video, hype the videos that you are watching these days. Also you can revise the complete syllabus through the course section. Okay, that course is not just for the purpose of YouTube classes being the short and small content. It is comprehensively covered content. Whatever needs to be updated will be updated within a few days. So you have to wait for a few days and I will update the complete content as well. Okay, if you are watching a bilingual language lectures, you can focus there also. There is no issue. Whatever current affairs updates are there, I will make a separate video for the same. Okay, that's it for the day, and let's connect in our next section. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care guys.